Most people think success is about what you gain. For Anthony Tan, it started with what he was willing to throw away. Imagine being born into the Nissan family of Malaysia. Your grandfather founded Tan Chong Motor. Your father is a billionaire. Your path is paved in gold, provided you stay quiet and follow the script. But Anthony Tan didn't just go off script, he burned the book. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how a disinherited heir built a $40 billion monopoly by fighting a guerrilla war on the streets of Jakarta and Bangkok. You will learn how he used a Trojan horse strategy to hire the very people trying to kill him, and the dark reason why winning that war might be his greatest tragedy. It started with a conversation in 2011. A friend visited Anthony in Kuala Lumpur and complained about how dangerous and broken the local taxi system was. In 2011, Malaysia's taxis were ranked some of the worst in the world. Drivers overcharged, cars were falling apart, and for women, riding alone at night was a genuine risk. Anthony took this to his father. He didn't want to just sell cars, he wanted to fix the way people moved. He proposed a platform called My Taxi. His father's response wasn't just a no, it was a don't you dare. In the Tan dynasty, you sell the hardware. You don't worry about the software of the streets. To his father, Anthony's idea was a low-class distraction. Anthony had a choice: stay a prince in a motor empire or become a pariah. He chose the latter. He left the family business, and his father disinherited him. The safety net was gone. He started My Taxi in 2012 in a windowless storage room in Kuala Lumpur. He wasn't a CEO yet. He was a salesman for a product nobody wanted. At 4 a.m., while his former peers were leaving nightclubs, Anthony was standing at greasy gas stations. He wasn't there for gas. He was begging 60-year-old taxi drivers to look at a Nokia phone. These men didn't know what an app was. They didn't trust banks. And they certainly didn't trust a rich kid in a polo shirt. By 2013, My Taxi was working, bringing safety to Malaysia. But Anthony realized a local taxi app was a defensive play. Uber was coming. If he stayed as My Taxi, he would be a small fish in a single pond. He rebranded to Grab and moved his headquarters to Singapore. This was the moment the mission changed. He wasn't just fixing Kuala Lumpur's taxis anymore. He was going for a regional land grab. He stopped being a local problem solver and started being a regional predator. He was no longer just a traitor to his family. He was now a target for every taxi union in Southeast Asia. Now that he had the name, he needed the big prize, Indonesia. But Indonesia wasn't Malaysia. It was a behemoth of 270 million people ruled by the massive Bluebird taxi fleet and unregulated ojek motorcycles. Imagine the life of a Bluebird driver in 2015. You make $22 a day, enough to feed a family. Then, almost overnight, an invisible hand starts taking your customers. As Grab surged into Jakarta, those drivers watched their daily take-home pay drop to $3. They weren't just losing market share, they were losing the ability to buy rice. In March 2016, the frustration turned into a physical explosion. Over 10,000 taxi drivers paralyzed Jakarta. This was a steel wall. They blocked the main arteries of the city and set tires on fire in the middle of the highway. Bluebird drivers who refused to join the strike were dragged out of their cars and beaten by their own colleagues. The message to Anthony Tan was clear: leave Jakarta, or we will burn your company to the ground. Most CEOs would have looked at the smoke and retreated to Singapore. Anthony did something far more calculated. He realized he couldn't beat the street with an app alone. He needed to co-opt the very people who were trying to kill him. He went to the leaders of the driver syndicates, the street bosses. He offered them a deal: integrate the traditional taxis into the Grab app. He essentially told them, stop fighting the future and own a piece of it. By giving the blue wall a way to make money through Grab, he dismantled the protest from the inside. He didn't win by having the best technology. He won by understanding the survival instinct of the Indonesian street. He turned his biggest attackers into his most loyal foot soldiers. While Anthony was subduing Jakarta, a giant was watching from San Francisco, Uber. Uber arrived with a Western playbook, obsessed with Uber Black, luxury sedans and professional drivers. They treated Bangkok and Manila like they were American boulevards. In these cities, the car is a liability. The only thing that moves is the motorcycle. Anthony launched GrabBike into the heart of the chaos. While Uber's passengers sat in air-conditioned silence watching the clock tick, Grab's passengers were donning green helmets and weaving through stationary bumpers. He realized that in a developing economy, time is more valuable than status. A CEO would rather hop on the back of a 150cc scooter and arrive on time than sit in a Mercedes for 2 hours. Uber's GPS struggled with the Soi, narrow alleys, and barangays. Anthony's team spent thousands of hours manually mapping these backstreets. They built GrabChat because they knew drivers were often riding one-handed and couldn't type. He wasn't just building a transport company, he was building a navigational monopoly. He was mapping the parts of Asia that Silicon Valley didn't think were worth the effort. By 2017, the region became the primary battlefield for the global ride-sharing war. Anthony Tan versus Travis Kalanick. Uber used Greyball, software designed to identify and deceive police who were trying to sting their drivers. Anthony played a different game. He didn't hide from the police. He made them part of the ecosystem. He spent years building personal relationships with transport ministries. He framed Grab not as a disruptor, but as a national champion. He was the local son fighting the American invader. In Southeast Asia, national pride is a lethal currency. In March 2018, the white flag was raised. In a secret meeting in Singapore, Uber exited Southeast Asia entirely, handing over their operations to Grab. Anthony had defended his porch against the most aggressive tech giant in history. But as he stood on the mountain of Uber's remains, he didn't realize he had just traded one master for another. To fund this victory, he had to go to the only man who could write $1 billion check without blinking. The meeting happened on the top floor of a Tokyo skyscraper with Masayoshi Son, the founder of SoftBank. Masa-san looked at Anthony and gave him an ultimatum. Take my money. If you don't, I will give it to your competitor and crush you. Anthony took the money, roughly $3 billion. But it was blood money. Masa-san didn't want a sustainable business. He wanted a monopoly. To satisfy him, Grab had to enter blitzscaling. Anthony was losing hundreds of millions a quarter to buy customers. He was paying people to eat and ride while paying drivers to stay online. The company was growing like wildfire, but Anthony had traded his autonomy for a war chest. He was now a general in Masa-san's global tech army. December 2021. Grab went public on the NASDAQ through a $40 billion SPAC merger, the largest in history. Anthony was the golden boy of global tech. Then, the sun went down. Within months, the stock plummeted over 70%. Wall Street asked a question Anthony wasn't used to hearing. When do you actually make money? The market didn't care about the guerrilla war. They wanted EBITDA. This was the moment the hero had to become a machine. To save the stock, Anthony pivoted. He had to stop being the charismatic founder and start being a cold-blooded operator. He slashed incentives for drivers and raised fees for passengers. The man who once stood at 4 a.m. gas stations was now cutting driver pay from a boardroom in Singapore to satisfy investors in Manhattan. The partner had become a cost center. By 2025, the pressure reached a breaking point. During the massive ojol strikes, 2 young drivers, Afan Kurniawan and Rusdam Diansyah, lost their lives. These were the casualties of a system pushed to absolute mathematical exhaustion. In September 2025, Anthony Tan left the glass towers and flew to Makassar. The Grab logo on every smartphone in Southeast Asia turned black. Anthony sat in the modest homes of the deceased drivers. For the first time, he realized he wasn't the rebel anymore. He was the Goliath. He had built a system so efficient that it had become indifferent to the very people who built it. He had won the war, but he was losing the soul of the company. It is February 12, 2026. For years, critics called Grab a zombie company, a giant fueled by SoftBank's billions that would collapse the moment the cash ran out. Anthony Tan just silenced them. In a historic earnings call, he announced Grab's first-ever full-year net profit of $268 million. The machine isn't just running, it's finally printing money. But it was his next move that changed the game. Anthony authorized a $500 million share buyback. By buying back his own stock, he is systematically cutting the strings of the investors who once controlled him. He isn't just a CEO anymore. He is the architect of his own liberation. He isn't just defending his home turf, he's invading the West. On the same day he announced the profits, Anthony dropped a bombshell. Grab is acquiring Stash, a major US fintech app, for $425 million. He is moving into the heart of the American financial system, taking the lessons learned in the alleys of Jakarta and bringing them to Wall Street. The disinherited heir is now buying American tech companies with his own profits. The tragedy of 2025, the loss of drivers like Afan and Dandy and Makassar, remains a scar on the company's soul. Anthony didn't ignore it. He used it to pivot. He realized that to survive 2026, Grab couldn't just be an algorithm. He's shifting the company toward a human-centric monopoly. He is still the Goliath of the region, but he's a Goliath that is finally answering to itself, not to a boardroom in Tokyo or a skyscraper in Manhattan. Anthony Tan has achieved what few founders ever do. He survived the burn phase, he survived the war phase, and he has entered the empire phase. The son who was cast out of a car dealership has built a digital kingdom that now buys its own freedom, one share at a time.